Have you ever found yourself drawn to someone you could never have, caught in a web of emotions you couldn't quite explain? This is a story about forbidden connections, hidden desires, and the unspoken bonds that shape who we are. As we peel back the layers of this unforgettable tale, you'll uncover how one moment can alter the course of a life forever. Stay with us until the end, because what lies ahead is not just a story, it's a reflection of the choices we all face, the risks we take, and the lessons we learn along the way. Before we dive into this gripping narrative, let me personally invite you to be part of our growing community. By subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing them with your friends, you're not just supporting our work. You're becoming a part of a space where stories inspire, move, and connect us. Every click, every comment, every like fuels our mission to bring you tales that resonate deeply. So buckle up, because this journey will leave you questioning, reflecting, and feeling in ways you never expected. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on today's topic. If you enjoy the content, please comment 1 below. If it doesn't resonate with you, leave a 0. Your feedback is crucial as it helps me create better videos that align with your interests. Now, let's get started. Before we dive into the heart of this story, let me take a moment to personally invite you to join our growing community. By subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing them with your friends, you're not just supporting us, you're becoming a part of something truly special. Every click, every comment, every interaction breathes life into our work and fuels our passion to share stories that touch the soul and stir emotions. Your support means the world to us, and we are deeply grateful for every moment you spend with us. So, stay until the very end of this video to uncover every gripping detail, because this journey is one you won't want to miss. It was an ordinary family gathering, or so it seemed at first glance. The house was alive with the hum of conversation, bursts of laughter, and the warm glow of music filling the air. I was 18 at the time, young, impressionable, and oblivious to the storm quietly brewing within me. Among the familiar faces, my gaze fell on him, someone I had known my entire life. Yet that night, everything felt different. For the first time, I saw him through a lens that was sharper, more vivid, and painfully intriguing. His smile, once a casual feature, now seemed electric, his confidence almost magnetic, and his eyes. Oh, his eyes! They held a depth that made my heart race. It was as though the world had tilted ever so slightly on its axis, shifting my perspective. I couldn't shake the way my pulse quickened when he walked past or the warmth that flushed through me when our eyes locked, even for a fleeting moment. Did he notice? Was he aware of the subtle tension weaving its way through the fabric of our interactions? I wasn't sure, but I couldn't ignore the way the air between us seemed to thicken, charged with something unspoken yet unmistakable. As weeks turned into months, our paths seemed to cross more frequently. He visited the house nearly every week, always finding a reason to linger near me. Conversations that once felt casual now carried an undercurrent of something deeper, an electricity that neither of us dared to name. Every word, every glance, every fleeting smile felt like a secret shared between us. It was intoxicating, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. Then came that fateful afternoon. My parents had left, trusting us to watch over the house. The living room was bathed in soft, golden light as we sat together, talking about nothing and everything. The tension, always simmering beneath the surface, now felt almost unbearable. And then, it happened. He leaned closer, his hand resting gently on my shoulder, a gesture so simple, yet it set off a cascade of emotions within me. It was protective, comforting, yet dangerously intimate. My heart pounded as I struggled to maintain a facade of calm. But beneath my measured breaths, chaos reigned. Every fiber of my being was attuned to his presence. The weight of his hand, the faint scent of his cologne, the way his voice carried a softness I hadn't noticed before. And then, in a moment that felt both endless and fleeting, our gazes met. Time seemed to stand still as an invisible connection snapped into place. an unspoken acknowledgement of the tension that had been building between us. He broke the silence, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Laura has always been like a niece to me," he said, his words hanging in the air like a confession wrapped in restraint. The sentence lingered, unfinished, as though he couldn't, or wouldn't, complete the thought. His words were a boundary, a line in the sand, but the way he looked at me betrayed a deeper truth. I knew I should have pulled away. I knew the right thing, the safe thing, would have been to create distance, to shatter the fragile tension that bound us. But instead, I leaned in, drawn by an irresistible force. Our proximity felt electric, the air between us charged with an energy that seemed to ignite every nerve ending in my body. His warmth enveloped me, his presence consuming, and for a brief, reckless moment, the world outside ceased to exist. This was a moment suspended in time, a crossroads where every choice carried weight, and every second felt like an eternity. What came next would forever change the course of my life, a chapter written in bold strokes of desire, uncertainty, and the haunting allure of the forbidden. His hand slid from my shoulder to rest lightly on my belly, a movement so tender it sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't just his touch, it was the way it lingered, hesitant yet deliberate, as if testing the boundaries of what was possible. My breath hitched as his fingers brushed against my pelvis, igniting sensations I didn't know existed within me. I felt every nerve in my body come alive, a chaotic mix of longing and guilt. My mind screamed that this was wrong, that I was standing on the precipice of a dangerous cliff, but my emotions, raw and untamed, begged me to stay in the moment. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, a silence so loud it drowned out everything else. For what felt like an eternity, we stayed like that, motionless, locked in each other's gaze, as if the world had ceased to turn. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat a reminder of the line I was about to cross. I knew I shouldn't allow this, shouldn't let the fire within me consume my reason, but it was already too late. That line, once clear and rigid, was now blurred, and in its place was a connection so undeniable, so magnetic, that neither of us could resist. It wasn't just a fleeting moment, it was a turning point, one that would forever change the way we saw each other. The silence between us was more telling than any words could have been. It spoke of forbidden desires, of boundaries shattered, of an attraction that had simmered in the shadows for far too long. And when his hand moved ever so slightly, tracing a path across my skin, I knew I was falling, plunging into an abyss of emotion and sensation from which I might never return. His touch was light, almost reverent, but it carried a weight that left me breathless. If you are still watching this video, and find these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. As his fingers stilled, he looked at me, his eyes searching mine, as if seeking confirmation of what we both already knew. My body betrayed me, leaning into him, and the room seemed to vanish. The only thing that mattered was the space between us, rapidly shrinking until it disappeared entirely. Before I could stop myself, I leaned in, driven by a force that felt bigger than both of us. My lips found his, and in that instant, the dam broke. The kiss was nothing like I had imagined, if I had dared to imagine it at all. It was urgent, raw, and filled with a passion that had been suppressed for far too long. My hands found their way to his neck, pulling him closer, as if I couldn't bear even the smallest distance between us. There was nothing gentle or tentative about it. It was a collision of pent-up emotions and undeniable chemistry. Every touch, every movement was a confession of the feelings we had hidden behind polite smiles and stolen glances. His hands roamed my back, pulling me closer still, until there was no space left between us. I climbed onto his lap, the shift in position making the moment even more intense. His hands traced lines along my body, leaving a trail of heat that seemed to ignite every inch of my skin. I felt his fingers in my hair, pulling me into him with a mixture of tenderness and control, guiding the intensity of our kiss without diminishing its fire. It was as if time had stopped, and all that existed was the two of us, tangled in a whirlwind of forbidden desire. Each touch was a discovery, each kiss a declaration of the passion we could no longer deny. His breath mingled with mine, and I felt myself sinking deeper into the moment, into him, into everything we had tried to resist. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, just the raw, unfiltered truth of what we felt for each other. It was overwhelming, intoxicating, and utterly consuming. Eventually, our breathing slowed, and the heat between us gave way to a quiet stillness. We pulled apart slightly, our foreheads resting against each other as we caught our breath. His eyes met mine, and in them, I saw a mix of astonishment, complicity, and something deeper, something I couldn't yet name. We didn't speak, but we didn't need to. The kiss had said everything words could never express. From that day forward, everything changed. What had begun as a single, stolen moment became a secret we guarded fiercely. Every time we saw each other, even in the most mundane of settings, a single glance or a fleeting smile was enough to reignite the spark. We lived in the shadows of our desires, finding solace in the quiet moments we could steal away from prying eyes. And though we knew the risks, though we understood the weight of what we were doing, neither of us could walk away. The forbidden had ensnared us, and we were powerless to escape its grasp. We knew our secret had to remain hidden at all costs. The very idea of someone finding out, especially our parents, was unthinkable. They would never imagine that beneath the surface of our seemingly tranquil lives, there pulsed an intense, electrifying connection that defied logic and boundaries. So, we became masters of discretion, perfecting the art of evasion. At family gatherings, amidst the laughter and conversation, we exchanged fleeting glances that spoke volumes. Behind closed doors, in the most unlikely places, a bathroom during a party, a secluded corner at a family event, we found ways to steal moments together. Each encounter was laced with both excitement and danger, the forbidden nature of our bond adding fuel to the fire. Every shared moment felt like a rush, a delicate balance of thrill and fear. The risk of exposure heightened everything, the quickening of our hearts, the electric sensation of a whispered word, the heat of a stolen kiss. We lived for these fragments of time, fleeting yet unforgettable, carving out a secret world where only the two of us existed. Each clandestine meeting became an imprint on my soul, a memory I carried with me even in the quietest moments. The risk, far from deterring us, made the connection feel more alive, more consuming. For months, we maintained our secret with precision and care, crafting a reality where our bond could flourish in the shadows. No one suspected the depth of what we were hiding, and as long as suspicion remained absent, we let ourselves indulge in the refuge of our forbidden connection. Those moments were more than passion. They became essential, a sanctuary where we could escape the confines of the world and exist solely for each other. The complicity between us deepened, and each meeting felt like adding another thread to a tapestry that neither of us wanted to unravel. But then, one afternoon, everything changed. We were in one of our usual hideaways, a place that had become a witness to countless moments of whispered promises and stolen touches. But this time was different. The air between us felt heavy, and when I met his gaze, I saw something unfamiliar, an intensity that wasn't born from passion, but from an inner turmoil he couldn't hide. His eyes carried a weight I hadn't seen before, a quiet sadness that seemed to pierce through me. He reached for my hand, his touch gentle but trembling with restraint. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The silence between us grew louder, and with each passing second, my heart tightened, knowing instinctively that something was about to change. Finally, he exhaled, his shoulders sinking under the weight of what he was about to say. "This has to stop," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper, yet each word struck me like a thunderclap. The ground beneath me seemed to vanish, replaced by a sinking, hollow feeling in my chest. My breath caught as I struggled to process his words, to comprehend why he would even suggest ending what had become so vital to us both. I opened my mouth to speak, to plead, to say anything that might make him reconsider. But no words came. I was paralyzed, my thoughts scrambling to make sense of his decision. He lowered his gaze, as if unable to meet my eyes, and held my hands firmly between his, a gesture meant to console but only deepened my heartbreak. "We can't keep doing this," he continued, his voice cracking under the weight of his own emotions. "We're risking too much, and the last thing I want is to hurt you." His words hung in the air, final and unyielding. I could hear the struggle in his voice, see the pain etched into his features. This wasn't easy for him, and yet, his resolve was clear. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces as I realized he wasn't saying this for lack of feeling, but because the feelings themselves had grown too powerful, too dangerous to contain. He was trying to protect me, to save us from the consequences of something we could no longer control. Tears welled in my eyes as I sat there, clutching his hands, desperate for a way to change his mind. But deep down, I knew he was right. The risks we had taken, the lies we had told, the boundaries we had crossed, it had all reached a breaking point. And yet, knowing this did nothing to dull the ache in my chest, the sense of loss that enveloped me as I looked into his eyes for what felt like the last time. In that moment, I realized our secret world was crumbling, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The words fell from his lips like shards of glass, each one sharp, cutting, and irretrievable. His voice trembled, the weight of his emotions pressing down on him, threatening to break him entirely. Yet, despite the wavering edge of his tone, there was a resoluteness in his words that left no space for argument or denial. As I stood there, the reality of his decision crashing down around me, I searched his face for any sign of hesitation, a flicker of doubt, or a crack in his resolve. But his expression was painfully clear. He was certain. This wasn't a fleeting thought or a moment of fear. It was final. The air around us grew unbearably heavy, suffocating in its intensity. It was as if the very universe conspired to mirror the weight of our shared silence, the enormity of what was unraveling between us. My chest tightened, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. We had lived so long in the shadows, bound by passion, desire, and the intoxicating thrill of the forbidden. For months, we had existed on the edge of a razor, daring fate to catch us, convinced that we were untouchable in our secrecy. But now, in an instant, the precarious house of cards we had so carefully built was toppling, leaving behind nothing but the wreckage of what could have been. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice softer now, but no less firm. He reached out, his fingers grazing my cheek with a tenderness that sent a wave of despair crashing over me. His touch, once a source of comfort and passion, now felt like a goodbye. "This doesn't mean I didn't love you," he said, his voice breaking under the weight of his confession. "It just means we can't keep hurting ourselves and everyone else." His words struck me like a dagger to the heart, their sharpness slicing through every defense I had left. My knees felt weak, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't end like this. My mind raced, searching for a way to stop the inevitable, but I was paralyzed, rooted to the spot by the enormity of his decision. Every word he spoke carried a mix of pain and resignation that was impossible to ignore. He wasn't doing this because he didn't care. He was doing it because he cared too much. But that didn't make it hurt any less. If anything, it made it worse. How could I let go of something that had come to mean so much, that had consumed every part of me, just because it was the right thing to do? How could I say goodbye to someone who had become my world? If you are still watching this video, and find these lessons useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Without thinking, driven by sheer desperation, I ran after him as he turned to leave. My legs moved before my mind could catch up, propelled by the instinctive need to stop him, to hold on to him, to make him understand that we couldn't just end this, couldn't just walk away from everything we had shared. My hands grabbed at his arm, clutching him tightly as if letting go would mean losing myself entirely. "Please," I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. "Don't do this. Don't walk away." But he didn't stop. He didn't turn around. He didn't even look at me. With a gentle yet unyielding motion, he pried my hands away from him, his touch firm but kind, as if he couldn't bear to hurt me more than he already had. The moment his fingers left mine, I felt an ache so deep it was as though the very fabric of my soul had been torn apart. "I'm sorry," he said again, and this time, his voice was barely audible, a whisper carried away by the wind. He walked away without looking back, each step echoing in my chest like a death knell. I stood frozen, watching him disappear, my entire world collapsing around me. The emptiness he left behind was immediate, profound, and all-consuming. The memories we had created together, every stolen glance, every whispered word, every touch that had once set my skin ablaze, now felt like a cruel reminder of what I could no longer have. Our secret moments, once so vibrant and alive, crumbled into nothingness, leaving behind only the hollow ache of their absence. I felt as though I had lost a part of myself, a part that I would never get back. At family gatherings, life carried on as though nothing had changed. The same laughter, the same conversations, the same familiar rhythms of routine surrounded me, but they felt alien now, disconnected from the storm raging within me. My parents, blissfully unaware, never suspected a thing. To them, he was still the same trusted uncle, and I was still their dutiful daughter. They saw no difference, no cracks in the facade we both worked so hard to maintain. But inside, everything was different. The distance between us, though invisible to everyone else, was palpable to me. Every time I saw him, every time our paths crossed at a family event, I felt the weight of what we had lost pressing down on me. Our interactions were carefully measured, every word and gesture meticulously chosen to avoid suspicion. Yet beneath the surface, the pain of our shared history simmered, unspoken but ever present. His gaze, when it met mine, carried a mixture of sorrow and resignation that mirrored my own. There was no need for words. We both knew what we had lost, and we both knew it was irretrievable. The connection that had once burned so brightly between us was now a ghost, haunting every interaction, a reminder of what could never be again. Over time, the intensity of the pain dulled, but it never disappeared. The memories remained, tucked away in a corner of my heart that I rarely allowed myself to visit. Our story, brief and forbidden, became a secret I carried with me, a part of my past that shaped who I was but could never be shared. I moved forward, but a piece of me would always linger in that moment, in that love that was as consuming as it was impossible. I often wonder if he feels the same. If, in quiet moments, he thinks of what we had and mourns its loss as I do. But I know I'll never have the answer, and perhaps that's for the best. Some stories are meant to remain unfinished, their endings written not in words but in the echoes of what once was. At every family gathering, an unspoken tension lingered between us, a weight neither of us could ignore. It was subtle, imperceptible to others, yet unmistakable to us. Like a shadow, it followed us, hanging in the air, dense and suffocating. This wasn't a silence born from discomfort alone. It was the silence of shared history, of memories too potent to forget yet too dangerous to relive. We moved cautiously around each other, careful not to break the invisible boundary that now divided us. There were no more fleeting touches, no meaningful glances exchanged across the room. The smiles that once carried hidden messages were now replaced by neutral expressions, carefully controlled. We had mastered the art of restraint, perfecting the distance required to coexist without raising suspicion. But beneath the surface, the shadow of our past loomed, heavy and inescapable. Occasionally, our eyes would meet, and in those fleeting moments, echoes of what we once shared would resurface. Yet those gazes were no longer warm or inviting. They were heavy with sadness, tinged with regret. They spoke volumes in their silence, carrying the weight of our mutual understanding. What we had, what we risked, what we lost, it all lived in those brief exchanges. The emotions that once bound us so fiercely had now settled into a quiet, unspoken ache, buried beneath layers of composure and denial. Though the passion and intensity of our connection had faded, the memory of it lingered. It had become an indelible part of us, woven into the fabric of who we were. We didn't talk about it, didn't acknowledge it aloud, but it was there, a quiet undercurrent in our interactions, a whisper of a story no one else could know. That chapter, though closed, was etched into our souls, shaping how we saw each other and ourselves. It wasn't just a part of our shared past. It was a part of us, a thread that would always bind us in some unspoken way. Despite the loss, I didn't regret it. I couldn't. The moments we shared, though fleeting and forbidden, had been transformative. They forced me to confront my desires, my fears, and the depth of my emotions in ways I never imagined possible. In those moments, I discovered parts of myself I didn't know existed. The intensity of what I felt, the joy, the passion, the pain, pushed me to understand who I truly was. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And for that, I was grateful. Those experiences, though painful in hindsight, became a mirror through which I saw myself clearly for the first time. They allowed me to grow, to understand the complexities of my heart, and to accept the dualities within me, the light and the shadows. That chapter of my life, though bittersweet, was a turning point. It shaped me, molded me, and became a part of the story that led to the person I am today. As life moved forward, the intensity of those memories softened, like the edges of an old photograph fading over time. But the lessons remained. That chapter may have ended, but it was never erased. I had to carry it with me, not as a burden but as a reminder of my resilience and capacity for deep, transformative feeling. It was a piece of my story, a piece I wouldn't trade for anything, because it helped me understand myself in ways I never could have otherwise. Today, as I share this story with you, I do so without shame or regret. It is my truth, and though it may be difficult for some to understand, it's a part of who I am. Every decision I made, every risk I took, every moment I lived, it all brought me here. I am a person shaped by my experiences, both the beautiful and the painful, and I embrace them all. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something, I invite you to stay with me on this journey. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the stories I'll share in the future. And more than anything, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What did this story mean to you? How did it make you feel? Leave a comment below. I'm eager to connect with you, to hear your perspective, and to continue building this space where we can share openly and honestly. Thank you for being a part of this story and for allowing me to share a piece of my soul with you. As we wrap up this story, I want to leave you with a question. What did this tale teach you about life, relationships, or even yourself? Reflect on one thing you've learned and share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Every story has a lesson, and every lesson has the power to transform. If this video moved you, sparked a thought, or made you see things differently, let us know. And if you'd like to join us on more journeys like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that could change the way you see the world. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.